Hello, this is Colin Liddell, and this is the Shortpod, a brief and succinct podcast commenting on the events of the day. And today it is the 31st of January 2020, a day which will go down in history as Brexit Day. Here in Japan, this is not particularly big news, especially as the country is now struggling with the threat posed by the coronavirus. But in a way, the coronavirus underlines what a sensible idea Brexit is. Multinational banks like the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, they run ads in the press, online, and on posters in the London Underground, literally saying that Britain is not an island. Well, the fact is that Britain is an island, and being an island is a very, very convenient way to be. Contrary to the kind of narrative that globalists present, being an island doesn't prevent you from trading with the rest of the world. In fact, it probably helps you to trade with the rest of the world. Britain became a major trading power in the 16th and 17th centuries onwards because it was an island. It didn't have to spend a large part of its GDP defending its land borders. Therefore, it was able to take to the seas and connect with the world. But being an island also gives you the ability, if needed, to close off your borders. We saw this to good effect in the Napoleonic Wars and World War II, where Britain's island status ensured that it could hold out against the armies of Napoleon and Hitler. Being an island is unquestionably a good thing, and having a political system that reflects that basic fact and utilizes it is obviously a good thing. In another sense, the island can also be seen as a kind of metaphor for nationalism. Even if your country is landlocked, you can still create a virtual island by having a strong sense of national identity and having clear and well-regulated borders. Of course, this is not to say that post-Brexit Britain won't make any mistakes. It probably will. The government of Boris Johnson has some disturbingly globalist leanings. Britain still has the same fundamental problem it had before Brexit, which is it has a low fertility rate, 1.6 roughly, which means the population is continually shrinking unless immigrants come in. Britain temporarily solved this problem by opening its doors to people from the EU, mainly East Europeans who came into Britain to get higher wages, hard-working people, white people, who were able to adjust relatively quickly to our culture because we're both European, racially, culturally, etc. Now, without being part of the EU, we will still have that basic problem of a population deficit. It might be a good idea, given the growing interest in environmentalism and so on, to try to shrink the population. But for a consumer capitalist society driven by debt, to try to manage an economy with a shrinking population in which old people were an extremely disproportionately large group, that would be very, very tricky, I think. So I don't really see that as an option. Unfortunately, I think that post-Brexit Britain, despite its splendid island condition, which allows it to be as secure as it wants to be, will probably resort to increasing amounts of third world immigration. If we had stayed in the EU longer, we would have had access to more white immigration to make up for our population and fertility deficit, but ultimately we would have had to face this problem at some time. So now Brexit pushes Britain into a situation where it has to face its demographic crisis. Do we want to be a country with a permanent fertility rate of 1.6 and falling, relying upon ever-increasing amounts of third-world immigration? Or do we want to get serious and look at a way of stabilizing our population, our people, and our culture? So, one good thing about Brexit is it forces these very, very important, radical, and existential problems to be addressed. Hopefully, there too, the British people will ultimately make the right decision. That's all for me. Over and out.